The grand ballroom of the Sterling Grand Hotel lay in elegant silence, crystal chandeliers casting gentle shadows across the polished marble floor. Marcus Chun moved quietly between scattered chairs, his cleaning cart wheels whispering against the stone as he worked through the late evening hours. At 35, he carried himself with a dignity that his janitor's uniform couldn't diminish, his careful movements suggesting a grace that went far beyond his current occupation. The massive Steinway grand piano dominated the far end of the ballroom, its ebony surface gleaming under the soft lighting. Marcus paused in his work, drawn by an invisible force toward the instrument. His calloused hands, roughened by years of cleaning solutions and hard work, hovered just above the pristine keys without touching them. Where in the world are you watching this story unfold tonight? He wondered silently, as if speaking to an unseen audience. What time is it where you are right now, as this moment begins to change everything? A single tear traced down his cheek as distant memories of concert halls and standing ovations flickered through his mind, quickly pushed away by the reality of his 80-year-old daughter, Emma, sleeping peacefully at home, depending on him for everything. The following morning brought a whirlwind of activity to the Sterling Grand Hotel. Victoria Sterling, the 20-year-old heiress whose family owned the prestigious establishment, swept through the lobby with her usual commanding presence. Her auburn hair caught the morning sunlight streaming through the towering windows as she discussed final preparations for tomorrow evening's charity gala with her assistant. "I have the most delightful idea," Victoria announced to the gathering crowd of staff members in the main conference room. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she gestured toward the ballroom. "Tomorrow night's gala will feature a special challenge. I'll place Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 on the Steinway, and anyone brave enough to play it flawlessly will win a rather unique prize." She paused dramatically, enjoying the curious expressions around her. "If someone can truly master that piece, I'll consider their proposal of marriage," she declared with a laugh that echoed through the room. The hotel manager, Richard Blackwood, smirked from his position near the doorway. He was a thin man with sharp features and an even sharper tone. "That's quite safe, Miss Sterling," he said with obvious amusement. "I doubt any of our guests have the skill for such a demanding piece. And certainly none of our staff would dare presume to try such a thing. They know their place." Marcus heard every word from the hallway where he stood with his cleaning supplies, invisible to the group gathered in the conference room. The mention of Rachmaninoff sent a familiar chill down his spine. He knew that concerto intimately, had performed it countless times in concert halls across Europe before everything changed. His fingers unconsciously moved in the air, remembering the complex passages that had once flowed effortlessly from his hands. The muscle memory remained sharp despite 5 years away from serious performance. He thought of Emma, probably just waking up in their small apartment across town, getting ready for school with a babysitter's help. Blackwood's voice drifted out again, dripping with condescension. "Can you imagine," he was saying to the other staff members who had gathered to listen, "if one of the cleaning crew thought they could sit at that magnificent instrument? The very idea is absurd." Marcus gripped the handle of his mop bucket tighter, the metal cold against his palm. He had scrubbed these floors for 3 years, grateful for steady work that let him provide for his daughter. But hearing the dismissive laughter from inside the room stirred something deep within him that had been sleeping too long. The morning sun climbed higher outside the tall windows, casting longer shadows across the marble floors as Marcus returned to his work, Victoria's challenge echoing in his mind with each step. That evening, Marcus arrived home to their modest one-bedroom apartment just as Emma was finishing her homework at the small kitchen table. Her dark hair fell in gentle waves around her face, so much like her mother's that it sometimes took his breath away. She looked up with bright eyes as he entered, her pencil still poised over a math worksheet. "Daddy," she said with excitement, "Mrs. Patterson next door was playing classical music today, and it reminded me of when you used to play for Mommy and me." Her voice carried a wistful note that tugged at his heart. Marcus sat down beside her, his work-weary body settling into the familiar chair. "Those were different times, sweetheart," he said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Now I need to focus on taking care of you." "But you still remember how, don't you?" Emma asked, her 80-year-old logic cutting straight to the truth. "Your fingers still move like they're playing when you listen to music on the radio." He couldn't deny it. Even now, sitting in their small kitchen with the sounds of the city filtering through thin walls, his hands rested on the table in positions that spoke of years spent coaxing magic from ivory keys. The Rachmaninoff melody that Victoria had mentioned earlier played quietly in his mind, as familiar as his own heartbeat. Emma reached over and touched his hand. "I miss hearing you play the beautiful music," she whispered. The next day arrived with the frenzied energy of final preparations. Marcus moved through the hotel's corridors as florists arranged elaborate displays and caterers tested sound systems in the ballroom. The Steinway had been polished to perfection, its ebony surface reflecting the afternoon light like a dark mirror. Victoria Sterling stood near the piano, discussing seating arrangements with her event coordinator. She wore an elegant navy dress that spoke of quiet confidence rather than flashy wealth. As Marcus worked nearby, arranging chairs with precise spacing, he couldn't help but notice her genuine smile when she spoke to the hotel staff, so different from Blackwood's dismissive manner. The sheet music for Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 sat prominently on the piano's music stand, its complex notation a roadmap that Marcus could read as easily as a familiar book. Each measure brought back memories of late nights practicing in conservatory halls, of the weight of expectation before stepping on at concert stages. "What part of this story resonates most with you?" he wondered silently, addressing the invisible audience that seemed to witness these quiet moments of transformation. The fear of being truly seen, or the courage it takes to step into the light. Blackwood appeared at his elbow suddenly, startling him from his thoughts. "Don't get any ideas about tonight's entertainment," the manager said with a sneer. "Miss Sterling's little game is for the guests, not the help." As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself repeatedly drawn to the ballroom. Each time he entered to adjust lighting or move equipment, his eyes found the piano. The familiar black and white keys seemed to call to him across the years of silence, across the careful walls he had built around his former life. During his lunch break, he sat in the small staff room with his simple sandwich, listening to other workers discuss the evening's events with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. The consensus was clear. Victoria's challenge was purely theatrical, a wealthy woman's whim that would end with polite applause for mediocre attempts. He thinks about Emma's words from the night before, her gentle plea to hear the beautiful music again. For 3 years, he had convinced himself that his sacrifice was noble, that providing stability mattered more than pursuing dreams. But sitting in that small room, surrounded by the mundane sounds of hotel operations, doubt crept in like water through cracks in stone. Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at a photo of Emma from that morning, her gap-toothed smile bright with innocent faith. She believed in him completely, the way only a child could believe in a parent. She had never heard him play seriously, only the gentle lullabies he hummed while tucking her in a bed. Yet somehow she knew there was more music sleeping inside him. Evening descended on the Sterling Grand Hotel like a curtain falling on the day's preparations. Marcus watched from the service corridor as guests began arriving in elegant evening wear, their laughter and conversation filling the marble lobby with sophisticated energy. Through the ballroom's open doors, he could see the piano waiting like a silent sentinel under the crystal chandeliers. Emma called just as he was finishing his preliminary cleaning duties. Her voice bubbled with excitement as she told him about her day at school, about the math problem she had solved that stumped her classmates. Her pride in small accomplishments reminded him of his own forgotten dreams, of audiences who once rose to their feet after hearing him play. "I have to go now, sweetheart," Marcus said gently into the phone. "Be good for Mrs. Patterson, and I'll see you in the morning." "Daddy," Emma said before he could hang up, "I had a dream last night that you were playing piano for a room full of people, and everyone was crying because it was so beautiful." Her innocent words hit him like a physical blow. After ending the call, Marcus stood in the empty service hallway, surrounded by the distant sounds of the gala beginning. The weight of years spent hiding his true self pressed down on him like a stone, and for the first time in a long while, he wondered if Emma's dream might somehow become reality. The ballroom sparkled with hundreds of guests as Victoria Sterling took her place near the piano. She wore a stunning silver gown that caught the light with every movement, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo. The crowd quieted as she raised her hand, a mixture of anticipation and amusement rippling through the assembled wealthy patrons. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced with theatrical flair, "tonight we have a unique challenge before us. This beautiful Rachmaninoff concerto awaits anyone brave enough to attempt its complexities. The prize, as you know, is quite unconventional." Nervous laughter scattered through the crowd as several well-dressed men approached the piano with varying degrees of confidence. The first attempt came from a distinguished banker who managed perhaps 30 seconds before his fingers stumbled over the intricate passages. The second challenger, a prominent lawyer, fared slightly better but eventually surrendered to scattered applause. Marcus watched from his position near the service entrance, his heart racing despite himself. Each failed attempt felt like a personal challenge, like watching someone handle a precious family heirloom without proper care. His fingers moved involuntarily at his sides, playing the correct notes in the air while the guests struggled through their amateur interpretations. Blackwood appeared beside him with a cruel smile. "Quite entertaining, isn't it?" he said mockingly. "These rich fools think money can buy talent." The third challenger approached the piano with obvious nervousness, his hands trembling as he placed them on the keys. Within moments, the beautiful melody became a discordant mess of wrong notes and missed timing. The crowd's polite applause grew thinner with each failed attempt, and Victoria's smile began to show signs of strain. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he watched the sacred music being butchered by well-meaning amateurs. This piece had been his signature during his concert years, the composition that had launched his career at the prestigious Vienna competition. Every wrong note felt like a physical pain, like watching someone destroy something precious and irreplaceable. A fourth guest tried his luck, lasting nearly 2 minutes before the complex middle section defeated him completely. The audience began to murmur among themselves, some suggesting that Victoria's challenge might be impossible to fulfill. A few guests started drifting toward the refreshment tables, their interest waning. Blackwood leaned closer to Marcus, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Miss Sterling's little game is falling quite flat," he observed with obvious pleasure. "Perhaps next time she'll think twice before encouraging such presumptuous behavior." Can you imagine if one of the staff members had the audacity to try this? The embarrassment would be unbearable. Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides, the calluses on his palms pressing against his fingers as years of suppressed emotion threatened to break free. Victoria's expression had shifted from playful confidence to genuine concern as the fifth challenger abandoned his attempt after less than a minute. The energy in the room was deflating like a punctured balloon, and she began to wonder if her spontaneous challenge had been a mistake. The beautiful Rachmaninoff piece seemed destined to remain unplayed, its complex beauty beyond the reach of anyone present. "I'm beginning to think this piece might be too demanding," Victoria announced to the crowd, trying to maintain her gracious composure despite the obvious disappointment settling over the evening. "Perhaps we should move on to other entertainment." Blackwood stepped forward with theatrical concern, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Miss Sterling, surely you didn't expect anyone here to master such a difficult composition. These things are better left to professional musicians, not party guests. And certainly not to anyone who doesn't belong in such distinguished company." His pointed emphasis on the word belong cut through Marcus like a blade. In that moment, Emma's voice echoed in his memory, her innocent faith in his abilities, her dream of him playing for a room full of people. The weight of 3 years spent hiding his true self suddenly felt unbearable. Marcus stepped forward from his position near the service entrance, his work uniform a stark contrast to the elegant evening we're surrounding him. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward him as silence fell like a heavy curtain. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Blackwood hissed as Marcus approached the piano, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "This is completely inappropriate. Get back to your duties immediately." Marcus ignored him completely, his focus entirely on the instrument that had been calling to him all evening. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the janitor, in his simple uniform, sat down at the magnificent Steinway. His work-roughened hands settled onto the keys with a familiarity that spoke of years spent in intimate conversation with such instruments. The first notes that flowed from the piano were soft, almost tentative, as if Marcus was greeting an old friend after a long separation. But within moments, the hesitation vanished, replaced by a power and precision that transformed the entire atmosphere of the ballroom. The complex passages that had defeated every previous challenger now sang with crystalline clarity. The music filled every corner of the vast space, each note perfectly placed, each phrase shaped with the kind of deep understanding that only comes from years of dedicated study and natural gift. This was not merely playing. This was artistry of the highest order, the kind that silences rooms and stops time. Victoria's hand rose to cover her mouth in amazement, tears forming in her eyes as she recognized the difference between amateur attempts and true mastery. The crowd stood transfixed, witnessing something extraordinary unfolding before them. When the final note faded into silence, the ballroom remained frozen for several heartbeats. Then the applause began, starting with Victoria and spreading through the crowd like wildfire until the entire room erupted in thunderous appreciation. Many guests wiped tears from their eyes, having witnessed something that transcended mere entertainment. Marcus rose from the piano bench, his hands trembling slightly as the reality of what he had just done settled over him. Blackwood stood speechless near the wall, his face pale with shock and embarrassment. The confident sneer had vanished completely, replaced by the dawning understanding that he had gravely misjudged the quiet man he had dismissed so casually. Victoria approached Marcus with wonder in her eyes, her elegant composure momentarily abandoned. "That was absolutely extraordinary," she said, her voice filled with genuine emotion. "Where did you learn to play like that? Who are you, really?" Marcus smiled softly, thinking of Emma asleep at home, dreaming of her father making beautiful music for rooms full of people. "I'm someone who almost forgot that gifts are meant to be shared, not hidden," he replied quietly. "If this story has touched your heart tonight," Victoria announced to the still mesmerized crowd, "then we've all learned something about the extraordinary people who walk among us every day. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places." In that moment, Marcus Chun was no longer invisible.